Here.
Here. Here. Here. Thank you. Item number 3 is a public comment for anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item either on the agenda or off the agenda for 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make any presentations? If you're going to be speaking on one of the agenda items, it might be more appropriate to wait until that. Is that all right? Anything? All right. I'll close the public comment. Item number 4, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. On item number 5, approval of the minutes.
Move to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We have one abstention. Minutes are approved. Any announcements or committee reports? No, we do not have. Okay. Any informational items? No. Okay. Good. We'll go to first of the public hearing items. Item number 8, PCN 12006 850 Bearing Group, Inc. Karen Melby will be making that presentation.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Karen Melby, Senior Planner. Before you today is a special use permit to allow a private school, which is Excel Christian School, and a recreational use, which would be for after-school activities in a day camp, which will be operated by the Northern Nevada Sports and Recreation Group. This will be located on a site approximately 4 acres in size, which is located at 850 Bearing, which is this property shown in red at the corner of Rockwood and Bearing. The special use permit kits will cover both of these proposed uses on this site. The building and site was formerly used as the YMCA. The Excel Christian School currently enrolls 116 students, which is from kindergarten through 12th grade. They are located in 3 locations within the city, and they want to consolidate their operations into one school site, and they're proposing to use the old YMCA property. The Excel Christian School anticipates the maximum enrollment to be on this site of 400 students, which would be kindergarten or pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. This is the proposed site plan. They are proposing to do a new two-story classroom building. The classroom building will consist of 8 classrooms, which will be pre-kindergarten through 6th grade. This would be the first phase of their project. Also, this phase would include remodeling the existing facilities on the site, which would be remodeled into classrooms, modernizing the gym, and then also adding administrative offices. The classrooms would be used by the junior and high school students. In Phase 2, they are proposing to add an addition to the new building, which would be this building, and they'll add an addition over here to the new classroom building. This would give them a proposed enrollment of 400 students. The Northern Nevada Sports and Recreational Group will operate in an after-school child care for a maximum, before and after school, for a maximum of 100 children. And then during the summer, they would operate a day camp. The staff identified the issues relating to this project as parking and traffic. The site currently has 127 parking spaces. The provided number of parking spaces will meet the needs of the school for Phase 1. In Phase 2, when the enrollment could increase to 400 students, the number of parking spaces will not meet the parking requirement of approximately 140 parking spaces. So staff's recommending that during Phase 2 construction that we look at maybe adding more parking spaces. And that would all be reviewed as part of the building permit for Phase 2. That's addressed in condition number 3. A traffic analysis was conducted for this project, and the analysis identified 7 recommendations to mitigate the traffic impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. Conditions 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 address the traffic conditions. At the study session, I understand that there was some discussion on the traffic. So John Martini is here tonight to address any traffic issues or comments or questions that the Planning Commission has. Based on the findings in the staff report, staff is recommending approval of the special use permit with 22 conditions. I also would like to let you know that I received an email from a Joe and Catherine Suave who live at 958 Pinewood Drive, and they support the project. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Do we have any questions for Karen?
Not yet.
What's the pleasure of the commission with bringing Mr. Martini up
I
now?
think the traffic expert should come up. Mr. Martini, sir?
Yeah. There you go.
Thanks, Karen. Let's see if I remember how to use the dog cam. It's been 3 years, Jack. Good evening, Chairman Vols and members of the Commission. John Martini. I am the Assistant Community Services Director, or in this case, the traffic guy, as Jackie used to call me. I prepared for each of you a figure that you should have at the dais with you this evening. At the study session, there was a little confusion on what the proposed traffic pattern will be for the school. I've shown that in the blue arrows. Additionally, the conditions that are specific to traffic, I've put a little number there and pointed to where those conditions speak to. Chairman Vols, at your pleasure, I can go through those conditions if you'd like, or if they're evident in the photo and the text.
I think
whichever
if you
way
would
you'd
do
like
that
to go.
quickly, John, there's
Certainly.
enough confusion on Tuesday. I think that would be worthwhile.
And before I start, does anyone have specific questions that have come up since the Planning Commission so I can think about them while I'm speaking? Okay. We'll start with condition number 4, which is the eastern driveway on Bering Boulevard. That's located in the center of the lower part of your figures. The applicant will be required to gate the easterly driveway adjacent to Bering Boulevard to the approval of the fire chief. And what that will entail is typically our fire chief, Bob King, requires this type of entrance to have what is known as a click-to-enter gate. It's a steel gate with an electric motor. As the fire trucks approach, they push a button in the fire truck and the gate opens. In discussions with the fire chief, as we concurred on this project, their setup areas for fighting a structure fire would be from the main parking lot, if they had to, from Bering Boulevard, not really a first pick, and from the what I'll call the northern parking lot. The exterior roadway, if you will, that we're going to use for ingress and egress from the site, or that the applicant will, was originally put in with this project as a fire access road. Back in the day, they like to have roads all the way around, but when we discussed specific areas of attack, they would be from the front. They wouldn't set up to fight the fire. It's used to get the truck out after they've put it out.
That was the northern parking lot where the new building will be, just south of it?
Right.
That's what you're talking about.
At this time, that's where they would fight from.
Got it.
Additionally, they can set up from Rockwood. And I don't think they would drive the fire truck on the football field, but if they had to, they probably could. Okay. Condition number 5 speaks to the left turn pocket on Bering Boulevard. The condition is somewhat technically specific to the amount of traffic load. At this time, with the student population, the existing storage length within the left turn pocket is adequate at about phase 2. If you read the condition, and I don't know if it was discussed directly in the traffic report, with phase 2, they'll have to come in and basically remove part of this median and increase the amount of storage capacity in that left turn. So as folks are using Bering Boulevard to turn onto Rockwood, they have more room to queue up and wait for a gap in traffic to make that left turn.
And that, when that occurs, that is the responsibility of the applicant?
That's correct. That would be done through a right-of-way permit, and we'd have review of it as well to make sure it meets the standards. Condition number 7 would be to convert the northern driveway, the northern part of the property, to a one-way ingress. Yes, Jackie.
Right now, the way it is, that you can come in and, is that on? Yeah. You
It's-
can go in and out.
Correct.
Right, okay.
So they'll have to do things like striping and signage
Okay.
to let everyone know it's one way. Condition number 8, the western driveway. That's currently gated. They're conditioned to remove the gate and open up the area for safe egress from the site onto Bering Boulevard. Commissioner Sperber went out to the site and noticed it's a little choked. We've had additional meetings with the applicant prior to this evening, and they have reviewed it for what's called the site distance triangle, basically so that a motorist coming westbound on Bering can clearly see someone wanting to exit from the driveway, and vice versa. The person exiting from the driveway can see oncoming traffic. From the initial analysis, the fence is going to have to be moved back a little bit. Commissioner Lean, some of your beloved landscaping will probably have to be torn out and/or modified, but they're aware that they need to take care of that as well.
For the safety, I don't care.
Right. Thank you. Condition number 10 is to install a school zone with the appropriate striping and signage along Rockwood, the length of the project. That's also been technically specified in the traffic report, and the applicants are aware of what they need to do. And I believe that's it.
Any questions for Mr. Martini?
The school zone will only be on Rockwood.
Rockwood, I believe the traffic report and what we've settled on is from Bering to Pinewood.
Right, okay.
And obviously, if there are issues that come up during operations, those can be modified.
Right.
Does that not impact, does Bering not become a school zone in terms of the regulations on that?
Commissioner Volz, the applicant and staff met with the RTC, NDOT, who declined to come to the meeting. They were invited. The applicant's consultant, Mr. Salegi, our fire department, police department, and the Washoe County School District. And based on the nature of the school, with most of the children arriving by vehicles, their enrollment is scattered throughout the valley. It's anticipated there are 2 or 3 children that could potentially walk to the school, and it was decided at that time that we do not have to put a school zone on Bering due to the lack of student pedestrian access to the school. But of course, there's a condition in there that if their walkable enrollment changes, that we'll re-review the Safe Route to School plan, and potentially down the road there could be a need to do some kind of school zone or modifications for pedestrians, for children walking to the school.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Martini?
Well, I don't know if it's to Mr. Martini. Again, as we were talking, where we're coming back out onto Bering, I was somewhat concerned when you're looking at the existing buildings, to the west of there, and in the back of there are trash compactors or trash that they use. Is there a common easement on those 2 properties or anything?
That I can't speak to. Perhaps Karen will know.
That property, that roadway or driveway is part of this property. And as far as we could find, there is no easement on that. It's just been something that's been, I guess, a mutual agreement.
And
The applicant is here tonight, and they may be able to address that.
Okay,
more.
and that was some of my concern there in that area where the existing shopping center would be using that, and people are trying to get out of this area. And, I've got some concerns with that, and it's kind of, it's a problem that's occurred, because nobody really used that road, and it appears like it's on the old YMCA land, and, so I don't know what, I saw some signage there. There should be something, it seems, to keep people from parking there, allow this applicant to be able to get out of that property and things like that. There's some concern on that whole thing, and I don't know what staff or maybe the applicant can recommend, but you know, I see that as a problem right there.
Well,
Well-
we're going to sign it as do not enter, right?
Yes. But that's just from bearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To speak to your point, Commissioner Sperber, some of this is incumbent upon the applicant. They understand that we've worked mutually to come up with the traffic pattern and ingress and egress. It is private land. Issues about what people have put on their property are their issues. It'll be incumbent upon them to keep this roadway clear so that the parents of the children can safely move in and out of that. I think it's really a matter with the applicant. I'm sure they'll have information.
And maybe I'll
for you.
ask the applicant.
Yeah, I think that
Sounds
would
good.
be appropriate. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Martini?
You did good, John.
Thanks, Tom.
Yes.
It's been a while. I was kind of
I know.
nervous.
You did good.
It's good to see you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Is the applicant or applicant's representative here? Would you like to take a couple of minutes?
I'll leave it here in case. Thank you.
Use a little closer. Good evening. For the record, Jeff Frame, architect. I've got the property owner's representative, Mark Turner, here, and then the administrator from Excel School is here. I don't really have anything, I don't think I could add anything more, so I'm just going to open it up for questions, whatever you may have at this time.
Was the issue that Commissioner Sperber brought up that of whatever uses the commercial shopping center there would use of the street, and whether that would ever create issues or not? And has that those discussions been had?
Mr. Chairman, Mark Turner, for the record, we have made contact with the adjacent business owners and explained to them how the use of that property is going to change. And actually, they will be doing some business with those business owners as well. So there's already a handshake deal going on there, and everyone seems to be pleased with the benefit that they'll receive in terms of business. And we'll work out the details there. We haven't had any difficult conversations about that so far.
But you have discussed on that subject right there.
Yes, they're very clear on the fact that we'll be utilizing that back driveway there as an exit for the property, and we have worked with them to come up with a means of allowing them to service their businesses as necessary in time frames that don't conflict with the entrance and exit from the property.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, Jeff.
I don't, this might not even apply, but how many of these cute little kids will be driving themselves to school? If it's up to 12th grade, some of them will have driver's licenses.
Commissioner Peterson, I'm going to defer to Christopher Dare on that question.
I mean, it's a good kid.
For the record, I'm Christopher Dare. I'm the vice principal at the school. And we have, we'd say about 50 of them are high schoolers. So out of that, 16 to 18, and that's as we grow. We don't have that many at this time. So we're hoping to have that many. So we probably would say 15 to 20 that are of driving age. Now, how many of them can afford the car and gas? We probably could cut that down to probably about 10. So it is pretty light. And then when it comes to different things, so it's pretty light.
So when they go to lunch, excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, go.
Will they stay on campus for lunch, or will they be walking down to the taco place or Smith's or?
They are actually, our lunch is only going to be 30 minutes, and we purposely did that. Part of it's our talking, because we know that Reed is right there. And so there was a concern of the mixing. If they have too much time, we could be causing more traffic in an area that already, I think, has a lot of problems. So we are doing that. But we also are working with La Fuente Restaurant, and that's part of it. And they're coming up with some deals for the students that they probably aren't going to want to go anywhere else anyway.
Oh, they've
and they
got
can
good
go right
food.
there. But the high schoolers, not the middle school, do get off campus. But there's a 7-Eleven right there, which I think the 7-Eleven will be very happy to see them, and then La Fuente. And so they won't have that much time to go too far. And even the ones who could drive, it'd be very light.
In their parking for the high school, I think I read that somewhere, is in that southeast corner.
Yeah, in the front
In
entrance.
the front parking
Yes.
lot. So
That would be for staff, for
Right.
student parking, and then visitor parking. That would
Good.
be, so we will not have any problem with our roundabout that we're doing.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing item, meaning that any member of the public can come up and state their opinion on this project or any other questions they might have with a time limit of 3 minutes. So, saw some hands before when we, public comment? Changed your mind? Okay. Oh, not this topic. Very good. Okay.
Gotcha.
Any member of the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, before...
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Before you make a motion, we would like to suggest some wording change on condition number 8.
It's a sheet you gave us.
No,
Or
this,
did you
we
not?
just made this correction right now.
Okay.
So, in condition number 8, it says the applicant shall remove the gate on the western drive to provide clear and unobstructed egress and sight distance. We'd like to add the and sight distance for the parents dropping off or picking up. So we just wanted to add the phrase and sight distance.
Yeah, good addition, I think.
We just want to make it clear that we're not, that we are talking about the sight distance, that we want unobstructed.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, before one of the commissioners makes a motion, I'd like to say this is an excellent use of the site. It's a viable and a good project for the city of Sparks, and I'm glad to see it come into fruition.
I'd love to make the motion, please.
Commissioner Peterson, go right ahead.
I move to approve the special use permit associated with PCN 12006, adopting findings S1 through S6, and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 22, as listed in the staff report, with the additional language in condition number 8.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Good luck with the project.
Nice to see a full house for a change. I know.
We had no big.
All right. We have item number 9, PCN 12007, Corey Bibelay. Is that right or close enough? Bibelay. Very French. Consideration and possible action, special use permit. Karen, are you going to be doing that? Go right ahead.
Again, Karen Melby, Senior Planner. This application before you tonight is special use permit to allow an indoor sports and recreation use, which is a personal training facility, to be located on approximately 4 acres in size, located at 10 Gregg Street in Suite 158. You can see it's this. It's this property right here, and they're moving into one space, 158, which is that space right there. FDL Fitness is a CrossFit personal and small group facility, training facility. The operation consists of one instructor leading small groups classes with exercises, and the clients will mostly be adults. Classes will consist of 2 to 8 clients with a maximum of 15. The classes run 1 hour in length. The issue of parking was addressed in the staff report. There are 109 parking spaces provided on site. In the parking code, Title 2049, there's a provision to allow for shared parking. In my staff report, I identified all the uses on the property and their hours of operation. So we've addressed that in the staff report. I'm not going to go into detail on that. Staff felt that the 12 spaces that was required by code could be adequately provided on this site. And based on the traffic analysis in my staff report, we don't see any problem with parking on this site with this use. In order to operate the personal fitness, the facility will have to make some compliance and changes to comply with the building code. Staff is recommending approval of the special use permit, and we'd like to suggest the change in of wording in condition number 2 on the expiration date. I've handed out to you the change. Here, right here. What we're suggesting is our standard wording for the condition, which is that the special use permit shall expire within 1 year of the date of this planning commission approval, unless the permitted use has been established or construction to accommodate the use has begun and is diligently pursued. A 1-year extension may be granted by the planning commission if applied for prior to the expiration of the special use permit. Like I said, we are changing the condition because we want to use the standard wording for the condition and allow them, because the use has not been established. Based on the findings in the staff report, staff is recommending approval of the special use permit with 6 conditions. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Any questions for Karen? Is the applicant here? Would you like to have present anything or say anything? Okay. This is a public hearing item. Is there any member of the public that would like to come forward and have 3 minutes to talk about the issues? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve a special use permit associated with PCN 12007, adopting findings S1 through S6, and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to conditions of approval 1 through 6 as listed in the staff report, and with the recommended changes for number 2.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Not, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Good luck with it. Item number 10, PCN 12008, Michael Booher.
Good evening, Planning Commission members and council. For the record, I'm Don Morehouse with Community Services. The case before you today is that of PCN 12008. It's a special use permit to allow for office space and outdoor storage. Grab a location map for you, vicinity map. Parcel is located at 1964 Fraser Avenue and resides within the Industrial Transition Overlay Zoning District. The parcel includes both an existing 1,197 square foot house and 2,448 square foot warehouse building that are used for a construction business. The applicant is currently storing construction equipment and materials on this parcel. A special use permit was approved in 1986 for an office building and outdoor storage. Certain conditions of that approval were never met, making that special use permit void. The property owner has applied for a new special use permit to gain a land use approval for the office and outdoor storage uses. A special use permit is required for all industrial uses within the Industrial Transition Overlay Zoning District. I'd like to conclude the presentation and open it up to any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions for Don? Is the applicant present? This is a public hearing item, so if the applicant is not present, we will bring it back, open it up for public hearing items. Is this the item that you'd like to speak on? Come right on forward, please.
Good evening. For the record, my name's Bob Lord. I'm the owner, property owner, and I run my business out of 1961 Pacific Avenue, which abuts up to the alley. I believe if I could just read the letter that I forwarded to Mayor Martini February 14th of last year, it will pretty much tell you what my concerns are, and I can do that in the time allotted. Dear Mayor Martini, I regret having to bother you with such an item as this, but I've exhausted the normal chain of command, and I'm extremely frustrated at this point. My issue is the tenant or property owner at 1964 Fraser Avenue, Mr. Michael Boer, and his total lack of adherence to city regulations, codes, and public access areas. I've had numerous discussions and meetings with City of Sparks officials regarding the building on this property and the fact that it never appears to have been finished. I've questioned several of the building inspectors how a structure in this unfinished condition could have received a final inspection or certificate of occupancy with open electrical boxes, with wiring protruding, no light fixtures installed, siding halfway covered with primer, bare siding exposed, never a finished coat of paint, many other visible code violations. The owner has occupied this structure from the late 1990s in the same condition it is now. Until a couple of years ago, the step in the rear entrance to the alley was a pallet. When I built the shop building addition to my building in 1998, the alley behind my property was abandoned by the city and offered to me as part of my parcel. Due to the fact that it was 2 weeks from breaking ground on the project, I declined the offer and it was deeded over to the property owner behind me on Fraser Avenue with a stipulation that I would have gate access to my electrical meter and roof access. The remainder of the alley remained a City of Sparks alley. Almost from the initial date of abandonment of this small alley parcel, Mr. Boer has taken it upon himself to use this alley as his own personal storage, which does not allow any emergency vehicles to access the alley, nor does it allow me to access my gate with having to maneuver through a junkyard of old building materials to get there. I contacted the City Enforcement Office years ago when Rhonda Knox was there, and she investigated the issue several times to no avail. I've recently, in the past year, contacted Joe Rodriguez of the Enforcement Office, as well as the Fire Inspector, Major Herrick, about the situation. Apparently, they contacted Mr. Boer, as he did make effort to remove about 80% of the debris in the alley, creating some semblance of access. At this time, he apparently thinks the back of my building is used as a window rack to lean glass against. During the street improvements to the Conductor Heights area the last few months, Mr. Boer has decided to park 2 of his vehicles in the alley to get them off the street. As of my last call to the fire inspector, he has removed 1 truck, but there still remains 1 truck parked in the alley with flat tires, so it appears that it isn't being moved regularly. I've twice stopped Sparks police cars on the street in the area and asked them to look into this illegal parking, but once again to no avail. Mr. Mayor, I've been a property owner in Conductor Heights since 1987 and have seen many improvements to the area as it transitions from a residential community to an industrial commercial area. Many of my neighbors there have put in a lot of hard work and money into a blighted area to make it better, and we're proud of what it has become. I'm sure my neighbor on Pacific Avenue, Mr. John Esquaga, would agree with my sentiments. As I mentioned in my
Sir,
first...
are you close to finishing?
I've got one more paragraph.
That'd be fine. Keep going.
As I mentioned in my first paragraph, I'm totally frustrated with this property on 1964 Fraser and the appearance of a lack of adherence to any city codes, rules, or ordinances. I cannot understand why the rest of us in the area are held to stringent zoning, building, code variances when this property is allowed to look like a dumping ground. I've tried to use the correct channels to resolve this blighted property, but I continue to get no results. In this age of diminishing property values due to recession, the situation is completely exacerbated by having a neighbor like this who apparently enjoys bringing neighborhood values down. I'll stop with that. I do have some pictures, if you'd like to see them, of what this alley looks like yesterday and what I've been arguing with there for about 10 years.
Okay, bring those up. That's fine.
Do I put them in here?
Either way. You can hand them out or show them. Is the commission okay with a couple more minutes?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we need to turn that around. This is up against the back of the building, which I contend has never been finished. I'll tell you the statement that I made to the late Mayor Armstrong when we inspected my building is I wanted to know who the building inspector was to finalize that building because only Ray Charles could have done it. This is the access to my alley. If you'll look right down here, This is how I access my rooftop, and this gate is supposed to have access to this property owner who was deeded that land once the alley was abandoned.
You say these were taken yesterday?
Yes. Another beautiful shot of the back door of this property and the alleyway. My concern is if there was to be a fire down here and I'm not able to access my property and the condition of this property, it wouldn't take much for it to go up into flames. I'll just stop and finalize with, this is what this building has looked like from the day it was built. It's never had a coat of paint on it. It's never been finished. And it's a fire waiting to happen. And I'm very concerned about it. It's all I have is my building, my business down there. I've been down there for a long time, and as you can tell, I've been fighting this situation for a long time. I would strongly recommend that you do not issue a special use permit for this person until they adhere to a lot more regulations than what they have in the past.
Thank you very much. Do we need a card filled out?
No, I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bobby, if you wait a minute real quick. You talked about the electrical code violations. Are they still a concern of yours too?
I think
as far as you know?
Commissioner Lean, I think over the years, there's been some little work. I mean, they poured a stoop out back. I think there may have been when I stood on the roof of my building in 1999, when we had a couple concerns with the building department, Mayor Armstrong was there, Wayne Seidel was there, Sean Carey was there. We had some concerns. And I looked over at this building and said, you know, the issue that I have is that you're making concerns on this $200,000 addition I'm putting on, and
Right.
you look back at this building. At that time, there were wires hanging out that had never had light fixtures on them. I have no idea how he could have got a certificate of occupancy.
But I know one, though, Mr. Lord has had his company for a number of years in the city of Sparks, an electrical company, and I know if anybody would know any electrical code violations, it would be Mr. Lord. I'm concerned with not only those violations, but the storage in the alley, also with the vehicles being stored in the alley or in the alley for fire in case there was. The fire department could not get there. I'm glad that you came in and brought this to our attention because none of it was brought to our attention. And I really appreciate it. You, not only as a local business owner next to this applicant, but as a concerned citizen. So
Well, we've got a lot of people in Conductor Heights that have spent a lot of money, and we brought that area around down there.
You bet.
And a lot of people have pride down there, and unfortunately, this is not one of them. And it's not helping any of us. Thank you very much for the job you do, and thank
You
you
bet.
for listening.
Thank you. We're still in the public hearing item. Would you like to come forward? State your name and your address and fill out a card if you haven't already at the conclusion.
My name is Mike Warden, owner of the property adjacent to the property we're discussing at 1978 Fraser Avenue, and I am on the west side of the property. I had some concerns when I received the special use permit application in the mail the other day, so I had my piece of property surveyed. How do I back it out?
Hey, you're pretty good at that.
So this is the building that we were just discussing in the back in the alley. This is my metal shop building, and this is our office. So this is the piece of property. Anyway, I had it surveyed, and the building in the rear is actually on my property about 1.5 feet. So, and I can go through the same stuff that they just went through with the trash and the pictures and the this and the that. And here's a picture of the actual property hub, and that's the corner of his building. So it's like 17 inches onto my property. I can keep going on and on and on about the trash. I have lots of pictures. I don't know if you guys need to see any of this. If you've seen it, it's a serious fire hazard. These are pictures taken from my property. We'll do one at a time, I guess. So that's the office in the front, and there's a piece of his equipment that's stuck there. The poor fire department, if anything ever went wrong there, I got a good feeling they would just stand back and let it go.
And again, these were taken yesterday?
These were taken this morning. So that's on my property, looking towards the northeast at the building that has never had a C of O, and you can see the quantity of things that are just strewn about. And for a building without a C of O, it's currently being used. It's full. There's one of the windows, and it's a second story. That's a second story window. Same thing. So a tremendous amount of trash and construction debris. And I would like to know if it's possible to add to the special use permit, if the special use permit is going to go through, if we can add a few more contingent items, such as something needs to happen to the building being on top of my piece of property. Slight problem. Questions?
Any questions?
Not this time.
Who surveyed that? Did an
US
independent, you used an independent?
U.S. Geomatics,
Yeah, that's
which
our-
is they've been in business for years here in town. I used them when I built the metal building in the back on my piece of property 8 or
Right,
10
so it
years
was
ago. They were familiar with it.
Outside licensed surveying?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's what I wanted.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
The applicant is not here then, I take it?
All right, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Thank you very much for your willingness to come out and wait through the other items. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to take a stab at this if I may. I'm usually not accustomed to denying a special use permit.
Commissioner Ween, if I may interrupt you for just a moment. If that is the direction you intend to go, I'd like the pictures that were shown on the overhead to be collected by the secretary and put in the record.
With
Please.
the, Mr. Lord and the other applicant, where we went?
I mean, if that's all right with the gentleman who had the pictures. I don't want to take your
That would-
stuff,
yeah.
but
But-
I need your stuff.
I wanted.
I think there's, Armando had a,
I'd like to offer some background in terms of the way staff approached this particular case. I think the situation as it stands now is that the previous special use permit, the 1986 special use permit, the conditions for that special use permit were never satisfied. So that special use permit became essentially null and void after either a year or 2 years, if there was an extension. So there's no way for the applicant to have that previous special use permit, ultimately approved. The thought with bringing forward this application was that presumably because the applicant, did submit for a new special use permit, that there was some degree of motivation on his part to obtain the special use permit, and to do so he would have to satisfy the conditions of the new special use permit. The conditions are updated relative to the original one, and so ultimately, were you to approve the special use permit tonight, it doesn't actually become a valid special use permit unless all the conditions are satisfied. And the conditions include, for example, with regard to, he's got to satisfy the fire department. he's got to satisfy the building department. The building code does not allow a building to straddle a property line, particularly if the other property isn't his. But even if it were, it can't cross that property line. So I think before you make a decision on that, I thought I'd share with you that that was the staff perspective, was that perhaps here there was an opportunity to ultimately bring this property and this use into compliance, but that would only occur if, again, all the conditions of this proposed special use permit are satisfied. So I thought I'd offer those comments so that as you contemplate whatever motion and decision you're going to make, that you have that the benefit of our thinking at least.
Armando, would one of the conditions 8 on the engineering division, the applicant shall comply with all the requirements of the community service engineering division, would that include the property line and the other gentleman's concerns?
Good thing
Here you come back. Yeah.
Commissioner Lean, no, it won't. The original building permit, not seen it. I will be upfront with the commission. I have not reviewed it. I would be very surprised if it showed the building going over the property line. I'm sure that what we approved as a building permit did not do that. Now, how it was physically constructed over a building permit now basically renders it a civil issue between the two property owners. I cannot, unless the city attorney can help me here, I can't think of a condition that this body, with the support of staff, can come up with when it's in fact at this point a dispute between two property owners.
Okay, thank you, John.
Now, where it will come into play is if this building truly has not been C of O'd, the building official will have to do a review of what the codes were at the time, where we are today, and if he feels that the encroachment of this building on the other property is material to issuing a C of O.
So,
and I can't speak for him to say how that decision would come out.
Okay, thank you, John. So with these conditions, Armando, the fire codes that might still be, they still might be in violation, that would be under fire department, condition number 6? They would check that, or would that be the building department?
Well, no, that would be, in terms of it says, the condition reads as follows. The applicant shall comply with all of the requirements of the fire chief prior to the issuance of a building permit or business license. A pedestrian path shall be maintained around the building on Fraser Avenue to allow emergency responders access to the rear of the parcel. The path must be a minimum of 4 feet wide. So that's the fire department condition. The building department or building division condition reads as follows. The applicant shall comply with all of the requirements of the building official prior to the issuance of a building permit or business license. Building permit number A1100310, that's the previously issued building permit, shall be completed and certificate of occupancy received by the applicant. So, the conditions of that previous building permit would have to be satisfied. And if the applicant is not able to obtain a C of O, a certificate of occupancy, then this special use permit would never become valid. Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of it. So
that's also my understanding.
And so to some extent, I guess what we're suggesting to you that in terms of why we opted to go ahead and bring it forward, obviously we have that responsibility to do that when we have an application. But to some extent, the thinking was, well, we've tried the code enforcement stick over the years. Maybe it can be wielded more vigorously, but perhaps also if he has an opportunity to ultimately satisfy the conditions of special use permit and obtain it, then there's also a carrot there that maybe motivates the property owner. So, hence the staff recommendation. But I think, obviously there were some issues brought to your attention tonight, and if those are such that you decide you want to deny, then that's your prerogative too.
What I'm a bit concerned that the applicant isn't here to talk about his understanding of the conditions that you have here as conditions of approval. I'm assuming there's been a conversation, and at least verbally he agreed to those conditions, or we presumably wouldn't be here.
I haven't had any direct communication with Mr. Brewer, but from my understanding, he definitely has the conditions.
But he's not here to.
He is unfortunately not here.
Mr. Chair, my concern would be too, if we just said no, and Armando, maybe you know, if we just simply say, no way, you're crazy, then this is just going to stay like it is, correct?
Well, the use would not be valid, or would not be an approved special use, pardon me. And so, we could pursue code enforcement on that basis. Because, neither the old special use permit would have allowed for the use, nor would there be a new one pending the satisfaction of the conditions for him to have that use either. So there is that, there is that aspect of it.
Understand. Is there any other discussion?
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Can I do it from here?
Come on down, please. Come on.
Put it on the record.
Based on the conditions that we're looking at on this property for this applicant to adhere to, and based on the fact that we've been here for 20 years at least and haven't adhered to them, what is your exact time frame for this applicant to adhere to all these conditions now?
Well, basically, that's addressed by condition number 2, the expiration date. And so basically, he has a year to satisfy the conditions. If he's making progress towards them, then he can apply to the Planning Commission. He'd have to come back to the Planning Commission for a year extension. But it's 1 year plus the possible year extension.
I guess the part that I don't understand is when I bought that property to move my business into that overlay there, the first step I had to do was come before the commission and apply for special use permit. It seems to me like the cart is before the horse here.
Well, I can't speak to your particular special use permit, but I would presume or assume that when you applied for special use permit and you came before the Planning Commission back then, that there were conditions of approval to your special use permit, and that permit was issued only after the conditions were satisfied.
So you're saying that this particular property had a special use permit before?
Yes.
And that's grandfathered in and blanketed. You don't have to adhere to those conditions except until you get that permit, and then you can do anything you want? Because that apparently is what's happened here.
Doug, you want to?
And I'm just, I'm not trying to throw rocks here. This has been a real bone of contention. And I just look at it, and the guy that doesn't do anything, I sat here and argued with the planner, the main planner here one day about a tree in my property after $9,000 worth of landscape I put in. And we argued over one tree, whether I was going to put it in and then dig it up when she left. And I just have, the people that are down here doing the right thing are getting punished. And this clown is just, thumbing his nose and doing whatever he wants to do. And apparently he's getting by with it. And that's why I asked the question about the time frame. I mean, how much longer can we go? And what's going to happen if this guy's place torches up in this alley after you've seen these pictures, and I lose my building? This gentleman loses his building and whatnot.
Thank you very much. Yes.
If I might, I think what Mr. Ornelas is trying to say bluntly is that you did it the right way, and perhaps this applicant didn't. But in this instance, we've tried the code enforcement tool that we have. He's now come in voluntarily, and we see it as at least an indication that he's trying to make it right. We have no idea whether or not he actually will, which is what happened in the first instance, where he applied for the special use permit, didn't comply with the conditions, and the permit was never issued. In this instance, it's staff's opinion that it's at least worth a shot. Whether or not it'll work, we can't tell the future. But I think, very bluntly, we appreciate you doing it the right way. Certainly, this gentleman appears not to have done it that way, and that's where we are now.
And I can appreciate that. One thing that I would add to it is that, you know, I think the period of time, being as we've been on this vacation for 20 years, the period of time needs to be shortened for this gentleman, a little bit different than the rest of us. I mean, he's been on a vacation here. So if he's serious about making this place adhere to what the rest of us have, I think the time frame needs to be shortened. I think a year is unbelievable.
I understand your frustration. Unfortunately, that's what it says in our code, and we have to treat him the same way we treat any other applicant for a special use permit.
Thank you.
Doug?
Yes.
Or other Doug?
Yes,
Attorney
Doug.
Doug? So we cannot change the length of time, the expiration date length of time. That's code, right?
I would advise you against changing the length of time.
Okay. That's kind of where we're stuck then.
Commissioner Lane, I think you had,
I don't have any more questions, but I'd like to indulge in a motion. You know, one thing that really bothers me is the applicant isn't here. That there is my main concern. I mean, usually somebody comes in for a special use permit, the applicant is right there for us to ask questions. So I'm willing to make a motion, whether I'm right, wrong, or indifferent, but I'm going to make a motion to disapprove the special use permit associated with PCN 12008. Deny.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
Sanders.
Before the commission takes a vote, I'm afraid we need a more substantive reason than the gentleman is not here. So if you could lay out exactly why you want to deny it beyond the fact that the applicant is not here,
Well,
I would appreciate it for the record.
Okay, there'd be
Thank you.
a couple concerns. Concerns about the electrical code violations that still might be in effect. That I don't know if those violations would be within the conditions of approval. I'm concerned about the vehicles in the alley. I don't know whether the fire department would, under condition 6, if that would be part of it or not. I just have concerns that some of these questions that were brought in front of the commission, I'm not quite sure if the conditions 1 through 8 would satisfy any of it. So, you know, based on those 3 or 4 findings that I found, that's why I make a motion tonight.
Thank
Sir?
you, Commissioner Lee.
Commissioner Lean, yeah, if I might add as well, the building department is definitely going to be looking at any type of electrical problems with the building. And
But that there would be under that permit number A1100310, correct? That wouldn't be...
That's correct. And in order for this special use permit to be valid, they're going to have to get certificate of occupancy on that particular building. And also, the special use permit is for outdoor storage. So they're going to have to adhere to Sparks Municipal Code, Title 20, pertaining to outdoor storage, which would definitely not allow any kind of debris or storage of any materials out in the alleyway or anywhere around the perimeter of the parcel. So this special use permit, if it were to be adhered to by the applicant, it would essentially clean up this parcel.
Attorney Doug?
Yes.
Question for you. Since the applicant did not live up to the conditions of the original special use permit, would that provide us with enough justification to say, to go forward with not approving this one, not recommending it for approval?
Actually, can I have 5 minutes to think about that? Can we have a 5-minute recess, Mr. Chairman? Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. That's the only.
I think we're going to have about a 50% reduction in the delay here. So it'll be a big, big improvement.
Drivers, relief is on the way to this busy intersection.
We're at about 150 days a year.